Hello everyone! Today we're going to take a trip back in time to the year 2000 to take a closer look at Kao the Kangaroo, Kangarek Kao in Polish, a classic 3D platformer game released by the Polish studio, Tate Interactive. Kao the Kangaroo is the eponymous hero of the game, a young, energetic kangaroo who enjoys life. But unfortunately, this idyll is interrupted one day by a poacher and the main antagonist, Hunter. Kao ends up in a cage, where he also finds his iconic boxing gloves, and embarks on a journey that culminates in a battle with the man responsible for his imprisonment. Graphically, Kangarek Kao didn't particularly stand out against other 3D platformers. After all, the year before we saw titles such as Croc 2 and Rayman 2. However, the graphics have their charm. The game features 30 diverse levels, including 5 with bosses. The worlds are colourful and have their own style. Everything from jungles through icy terrain to an alien planet has been designed with care for details and diversity. The animations are smooth, and the character models have character. Kao the Kangaroo is a typical 3D platformer game, with the player jumping on platforms, avoiding obstacles, collecting coins, and fighting enemies. Like many other platformers, it adds to the typical levels, with diversions such as snowboarding, controlling a speeder on an alien planet, and something as standard as jet skiing. Kao uses his boxing gloves to fight, which he can also throw at his opponents, but the number of shots is very limited. They can be found on the maps. The checkpoint system has been controversial since the day of release, as there is a limited number of flags that serve as control points, and they can be used at any point, including hopeless points where respawning guarantees death. Even the death animation provoked mixed feelings, as Kao turns into an angel and starts to float. As for the controls, they're passable, but like many other 3D platformers from its time, it has characteristic issues with camera work, hitboxes, and precise jumping at times. Kao the Kangaroo was one of the first serious successes of the Polish gaming industry, helping to shape the development scene in the country. At the time of its release, the game was often compared to titles such as Croc, Legend of the Gobos, and faced stiff competition, as there were countless 3D platformers at the time. In summary, Kao the Kangaroo is a platformer with a cheerful atmosphere, pleasant graphics, well, maybe except for the terribly blurred textures, which still has something to offer despite the passage of time. However, compared to the next part, it falls flat, but more on that later. Kao the Kangaroo for Game Boy Advance was released shortly after the premiere of the original in 2001. It was an attempt to adapt the first installment to the capabilities of the handheld console. Instead of three-dimensional environments, the GBA game offered two-dimensional side-scrolling gameplay. Although it maintained its distinctive style and presented recognizable character designs, it couldn't fully emulate the essence of the original. Players could jump, combat enemies, and gather coins across various levels inspired by the main series, but both the controls and the gameplay left something to be desired. The controls were adjusted for the GBA's buttons, but weren't always intuitive. The GBA version of Kao the Kangaroo received mixed reviews from players. While some appreciated the effort to port the title to a portable device, others felt that the game didn't meet the standards established by major platforms. As an interesting tidbit, in 2003, a quirky spin-off of the series, Penguin Kelvin, was released by Play Publishing. It was based on the engine of the original Kao the Kangaroo. The storyline has no connection whatsoever to Kao's tale. The game primarily consists of reskins from the first Kao the Kangaroo installment. Notably, cheat codes from the first Kangarek Kao game work in Penguin Kelvin. This oddball game was sold for $5 at newsstands and offers roughly 60 minutes, let's say, of fun. Kangaroo Kao Round 2 continues the 3D platformer formula. This part was also released by Tate Interactive, with its premiere taking place in 2003. 3 years between the release of both parts were not wasted. We got a much more mature, in terms of production game, bigger, better, and more refined in every field. No wonder this part is most fondly remembered by the majority of fans. Once again, Kao is captured, but this time he is freed by a parrot, our ally, who will accompany us from time to time, mainly in the narrative. Indeed, this part introduces a completely new way of storytelling. Previously, the narration was minimal, conducted through not very developed animations and simple sounds. In Round 2, we have cutscenes and dubbing. Soon after his release, our hero is given the mission to free all the animals captured by Hunter, who again is the main antagonist. To this end, Kao will have to go through many lands where he will encounter hunters' allies, like a shaman and a huge octopus, who serve as bosses. Graphically, Kangaroo Kao, but Round 2 has much more to offer than the first part. Even now, 20 years after the premiere, it can be appealing. The game is significantly more colourful and detailed compared to the first part. Levels are more varied, and they also have a bigger scope. You can see that someone had an idea for them. The enemy designs are also imaginative, with many details, and they are sufficiently distinctive and varied, especially the bosses. Like the first part, Kangaroo Kao, Round 2 is a typical 3D platformer with the player jumping on platforms, avoiding obstacles, collecting coins, and fighting enemies. We have at our disposal a range of diversions again, from snowboarding to jet skiing. Combat with enemies still relies on Kao's boxing gloves, but in this part, special attacks are added, which we unlock by collecting the right amount of stars scattered on the maps. Like last time, we also find ducats, but in contrast to the previous part here, their collection makes at least narrative sense. We need to collect 3,000 ducats to gain access to Hunter's Hideout. On the maps, we can also find crystals, which in turn allow access to bonus levels. Boomerangs have also been added, necessary to fight certain types of enemies. The checkpoint system has been slightly changed compared to the first part. Flags have been replaced with bells, placed at specific points on the board, which serve as control points, eliminating the risk of respawning from a difficult point. Sometimes while completing levels, we will have to use pinecone throwing, typically in order to overcome a water obstacle, for example by hitting a tree. Round 2 continued the success of the first part, maintaining its popularity among players. The game was quite well received, both in Poland and abroad, allowing Tate Interactive to continue developing the series. In summary, Kangaroo Kao, Round 2 is an excellent continuation of the first part. Despite having minor flaws, which are typical for 3D platformers of this period, the improvements introduced in this part make it far better than the first one. This game may not have been the messiah of 3D platformers, nor even the best in its period. Rayman 3 was released in the same year. But it was a very competent platformer that still provides a lot of joy while playing. Kao 2 is available on platforms such as Steam, where it has a overwhelmingly positive rating, 95%, based on 2303 reviews, and the first part, also available on Steam, averages 76% positive reviews based on 117 ratings. Kao the Kangaroo, round 2 inches version for PlayStation Portable, was titled Kao Challengers, and was released in 2005. It remained a faithful port of the second installment in the series, tailored for Sony's handheld console. Thanks to the enhanced technical capabilities of the PSP compared to earlier portable devices, the game offered an experience closely mirroring that of its home console counterpart. The three-dimensional environments, known from the original, were preserved in an almost unchanged form, maintaining a large portion of the details and graphical elements, although the texture sharpness had to be reduced for the PSP. Added to this was new content in the form of a Halloween-themed world with a fresh boss, making this port even more appealing to fans of the series, and a simple multiplayer mode was also introduced. Character control was adapted to the specifics of the PSP, utilizing its analog stick and buttons. The controls were fairly precise and intuitive, making the game fully playable on the handheld device. Player reviews for the PSP version were predominantly positive. Many appreciated the faithfulness of the port and the additional content. Overall, this Kao the Kangaroo port did the job, decidedly outshining the third major installment in the series. Kao the Kangaroo, Mystery of the Volcano, is the third main installment of the series. Released in 2005, it was primarily aimed at the Polish market, although Russian and Czech versions were also available. This time around, Kao has to solve the mystery of the volcano situated on the Pelican Island and save his friend who unfortunately got trapped inside it. The entire game revolves around finding 4 artifacts associated with the elements. Collecting these will reveal the mystery, and also require gathering a specific number of little spirits, akin to coins from the earlier games. In this edition, missions are chosen in a hub, which is the village of the aforementioned pelicans. A day and night cycle system has been introduced, influencing NPC behaviors and the game's sound environment depending on the time of day. Players can control vehicles as before, with the notable addition of an airplane which offers a completely different handling experience. At one stage, Players also participate in a race with virtual racers. Graphically, there's not much advancement from the previous installment, and it might even be considered a step back. The game environments seem to lack the same level of detail, with blurred textures, and there's a scarcity of enemy types. The earlier checkpoint system has been replaced with a campsite setup, serving the role of the bells from the prior game. Boomerangs have been swapped out for dynamite, while pine cones are now replaced by exploding barrels. This third installment is shorter, somewhat less visually appealing, and remarkably brief. It can be completed in about 3 hours. Generally, it's less acclaimed than its predecessors, which is reflected in its Steam ratings, holding only a 58% positive review score and an overall mixed rating based on 81 reviews. And this wraps up our discussion on the game. For many years, there was no word about a sequel. Fans actively demonstrated their anticipation for a continuation. Then in June 2020, the original creators announced a kind of reboot for the series. Kao the Kangaroo is the latest installment in the series. On September 1st, 2021, through the series' official profiles, it was announced that the game could be added to the wishlist on the Steam platform, where the first screenshots from the game were also published. It was informed that the premiere would take place in 2021. On November 25th, Tate Multimedia published a short video showcasing 13 seconds of gameplay through its official social media profiles. On even days of December 2020, as part of the Advent calendar, additional elements were revealed that can be expected in the final version of the game. On September 1st, 2021, another trailer was presented, showing a new look for Kao. It was also announced that the game's release had been postponed to 2022, although the developers did not give a reason for this decision. The game was eventually released on May 27th, 2022, for the PC platform. Here's the game's storyline. Kobe, the father of Kao and Kaya, has disappeared without a trace. Kaya decided to find him using Gadget's airplane, which we got to know in a previous installment. But she also went missing. One day, Kao had a dream in which Kaya tried to convey a message to him. After talking to his mother and taking her advice, he decided to find Walt, who would help him find his missing family. During training, Kao finds a memento of his father, the eternal gloves, which have their own consciousness. It turns out that Kao is immune to the negative effects of this weapon. The player's task is to overcome numerous obstacles and find Kao's family. Kao the Kangaroo, like its predecessors, is a 3D platformer. The gameplay involves traversing levels full of traps and enemies. The player has to jump on platforms, search for hidden passages, and fight the encountered enemies. This installment introduces hubs in the form of villages, this time different ones. The combat system has been completely redesigned to match contemporary productions. Kao delivers a fluid series of blows, during which, by pressing the button on the controller at the right moment, we can perform a special strong area attack. The gloves gain special powers. For example, in some parts of the levels, we can partially shift to another dimension, allowing us to overcome obstacles and also adopt the powers of the elements. As always, we also fight bosses. A novelty is the possibility of customizing our kangaroo's outfit. Cutscenes have changed significantly, also trying to meet modern standards, but the results vary, especially due to somewhat stiff animations. Kao the Kangaroo offers colourful cartoon-style graphics, which can be appealing. Character and level models are just okay, nothing above an acceptable level. The game was created on the Unreal Engine 4, which allows for much more in terms of graphics. The game received a generally positive reception, mainly scoring 6, 8, 10. Currently, on the Steam platform, it has an overall rating of very positive, with 80% positive reviews, based on 469 opinions. In general, the game is the biggest of the entire series. But after so many years of waiting, it's not surprising. In October 2022, a Halloween-themed DLC was also released. And that's it. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, give a thumbs up to the video, and leave a comment about which game series you'd like me to cover next. Until next time, bye, and see you in the next video.